part of state of our reach across the state. We have 321 judges, about 2,600 employees. Those 1.2 million cases we handle each year include everything from traffic citations to first-degree murder cases. Geographically, we cover more locations across the state of Minnesota than any other part of state government, 105 locations spread across the state. And the legislature gives us $735 million every biennium to do our work. This does not include civil legal services, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from civil legal services separately, but we are a pass-through for their budget amount, which is almost $30 million for the biennium. So that goes directly to civil legal services. Organizationally, we're what is called nationwide a streamlined form of a court system. We have 3 levels of court: the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals, and then the largest being the District Court. The Court of Appeals was established by constitutional amendment in 1983. The district courts were unified into one level of trial court in 1987, combining those county court judges and district court judges into one level. So that does allow us some efficiency to handle cases at the district court level. If you go to other states, you might find specialized courts, justice of the peace courts or municipal courts or juvenile courts. Our district court judges are able to handle any case type at the district court level, which allows us to make use of them in a much more efficient manner across the trial courts. Just a brief overview of the 3 levels of court. 7 justices on the Supreme Court. They hear cases as a group. Direct appeals, things that come directly to the Supreme Court versus going to the Court of Appeals would be tax court, workers' compensation, Court of Appeals decisions. First-degree murder convictions come directly there, as well as the Supreme Court handling any legislative election contests and judicial and attorney discipline. They hear cases either by direct appeal or through what we call petitions for further review, or PFRs. In 2019, just to give you some idea of the scope of those petitions, they received 620 petitions for further review. About 87% of them were denied, or about 13% were accepted by the court for oral argument and a decision. So a large number of people want their cases heard there, but given the amount of time we have in a year, about 13% of those are accepted. And those are the cases where the Supreme Court decides they really are going to have precedential value across the state and are very important cases they want to take. Court of Appeals, 19 judges. They hear appeals from obviously trial court decisions, as well as some administrative agency decisions and unemployment compensation appeals from the Department of Employment and Economic Development. They also have specialized cases where they're able to issue what are called writs of mandamus or prohibition, where they may order a judge or a public figure or an agency to either perform a specific act or to prohibit a specific act. So perspective-wise, in 2019, about 2,000 filings in the Court of Appeals. And then our largest jurisdiction, of course, is the District Court, 295 judges. You see on the list here the kinds of actions that they carry out in the various case types. In our metro jurisdictions, we may have divisions that handle civil, family, criminal cases where judges are a little more specialized. In greater Minnesota, a judge could hear any of these cases on a daily basis, and they do. Just to give you some perspective, the legislature a few years ago raised the amount for conciliation court up to $15,000. So those cases are heard in our conciliation court jurisdictions. This graph just gives you a little idea of where those filings from 2019 in the district courts really go. In terms of workload, it's important to note that judges spend most of their time on major cases, and that makes up about 16% of all case filings. Minor cases are much larger, but they don't take as much time. So some examples of major cases in the criminal area: felony and most gross misdemeanors, family dissolution with children, custody issues, domestic abuse. In the civil area, our bigger cases have to do with contracts, personal injury, malpractice, employment, harassment. So although a smaller number, they do take the most time, and that is factored in when we determine how many judges we need, how many of these major cases we have across our district courts. Administratively and for election purposes, we're divided into 10 judicial districts. 2 of those districts are single county districts, Hennepin and Ramsey. The rest are multi-county districts, the smallest being 4 counties in the 6th, the largest and making up 1/4 of the state, 17 counties in the 9th judicial district. So for administrative purposes, we allocate budgets out to each of these districts to carry out for the biennium. For election purposes, for example, if you're a judge sitting there in Crow Wing County in the 9th district in Brainerd, you're going to have to run with constituents all the way up to Kitson in the northwest portion of the state. Likewise, if you're sitting in Hennepin, you've got a lot more people that you're going to need to convince to vote for you in the 4th district. These 10 judicial districts are established by state statute. The last time they were established was in 1959. Our administrative structure, by statute, the Chief Justice is the administrative head of the court system. But as you may know, in 2005, when we moved to state funding of the court system, we established what is called the Judicial Council. And that is really our policy-making body for the judicial branch. I'll talk a little bit more about their duties in a minute. My office, as you see from the box on the upper right, serves as staff to the Judicial Council, and also provides statewide functions in the areas of finance, HR, information technology, research, etc. And then, of course, the Chief Justice in the middle box here serves as the head of the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is still responsible for our rules of practice, how lawyers will practice throughout our courts across the state. We have a number of boards related to the practice of law. They regulate lawyer behavior, our Lawyer Professional Responsibility Board. They regulate how lawyers are admitted to the bar and administer the bar exam. And they also regulate once a lawyer is licensed, what kind of continuing legal education they need and other things like that. Those are handled by the boards that report to the Supreme Court, and the State Law Library is also under the Supreme Court. Court of Appeals, Chief Judge is appointed by the governor, and Chief Judge Susan Siegel is currently the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals. And then chief judges in each of the district courts are appointed by their peers on the district court bench to 2-year terms with the ability to be reelected to a second 2-year term. And those district courts appoint judicial district administrators in our districts, as well as court administrators to serve each of our counties. The primary responsibilities of our council, as I said, are to set statewide policies. We're beginning to work on our 2-year strategic plan that will govern our operations for the next 2-year term, beginning July 1st. They set our legislative agenda. If we have anything that we need to bring to you as legislators in terms of statutory changes, those are chosen by our Judicial Council. Obviously, as the chair mentioned, our budget request is something that the council approves, and I'm assuming we'll be coming to you to talk in more detail about that during a budget session and a budget hearing. And then court performance and accountability, monitoring how we're doing, how long our cases are taking, how quickly are they resolved, looking at various case types to see how we're doing by district and by county are all done by our Judicial Council. And as I'm sure you can imagine, over the last 9 to 10 months, our council has been very busy guiding us through the pandemic. And some of the decisions that have not only been made by the council, but some of the input they've given to the Chief Justice in terms of the orders that she has put forward to help guide us through the last 9 months. So what I want to do is pause here and see if there are questions about general overview of the branch before I head into a discussion of what we've done during the pandemic, Mr. Chair.
To begin, I know that Senator Bigham has a question, but Senator Latz had a question earlier. He had his hand up. Oh, I've been told that that issue is taken care of. Is that correct, Senator Latz?
No, actually, my hand was up for a different reason, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, go ahead.
Now is as good a time as any. Thank you. I just wanted to call the committee's attention and the public's attention to the fact that Jeff Shorba and some others, including Chief Justice Gilday, Dawn Torgerson from the State Court Administration, and Anne Marie O'Neill, Clerk of the Appellate Courts, have recently been announced to be awarded the Minnesota Lawyers Attorneys of the Year. I suspect it reflects the work that they've done in response to the pandemic in the courts, and as a frequent practitioner in the courts and connected electronically to the courts across the state, I can attest to the challenges they faced and the difficulties all the court staff have faced in doing this. But I wanted to publicly recognize that award as well and congratulate Mr. Shorba, who I'm proud to say was a law school classmate of mine as well, and all the staff of the judicial branch for the work that they've done to try to keep an essential function of our constitutional government functioning during very, very difficult times.
Thank you, Senator Latz. I was not aware of that. I'm glad you brought that up. Congratulations to all those who were recognized for their professional work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Latz.
I think we'll go on to Senator Bigham. You'll have to unmute.
Oh, I thought I was unmuted. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Shorba, thank you for your presentation. And I have, in a previous career, spent time on working groups with Chief Justice Gilday, and it doesn't surprise me how well she and her staff have done with the COVID protections, because she is just phenomenal, gets down to work and looks out for her staff and the people that need to use the court. So kudos to you all. My question, and I'll have more later, but you said 1959 was the last time the district lines for the district courts have been looked at. As far as, does that mean considered to be redrawn, or can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Or maybe I didn't just catch that. I'm very new to the committee.
Mr. Shorba.
Mr. Chair, Senator Bigham, the last time that they were enacted into statute was 1959. That was the last time they were changed. They were changed a couple of times before that. We've actually, as we've gone through to state funding, which means that we took county funding away and made the funding of our courts part of the general fund from the legislature. Mm-hmm. We've been looking at how we can work across county lines and district lines to do our work. So some of the sharing of work, some of the centralization of work. Obviously, we don't have the authority to change those district lines, but we've tried to do our best to sort of blur those as we are trying to be as efficient as possible with the work we're doing. So my point was just that's the last time they were formally set in statute.
Okay, Mr. Chair. So
Senator Bigham.
We do redistricting. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do redistricting every 10 years because we get the census count and you know the whole process. I don't have to educate you on that. Is it worth taking a look at? And maybe this is something we can bring up when we have our one-on-one meetings, but I guess just for the committees, I guess I had no idea that 1959 was the last time they were set in statute. With all the population shifts, demographic shifts, it's curious as to why it wouldn't have wanted to be addressed prior to now, because 1959 was quite a while ago. So I guess we could talk about it more off record. And then at some point, I'd like to hear maybe an update on security. So whenever that comes in, I don't want to get ahead of your presentation, sir.
Mr. Chair, Senator Bingham.
Mr. Shorba?
I will just respond in terms of our efforts to look at how we're organized in terms of those 10 districts. It is now part of the discussion for our strategic plan for the next 2-year time period to take a look at that issue. So I want to assure you we are not ignoring it, and we do plan to have some examination of that as we move into the next biennium.
Yeah. I might want to remind members that there's 2 parts to this presentation, and we have quite a few people that need to speak. We've got the first half of our committee time is 45 minutes for the judicial branch that we're in, and then the other is we will be hearing from the Department of Public Safety for the last 45 minutes. So if you could just hold your questions until after each segment, and then we'll be more than happy to entertain if we have time. Mr. Shorba, are you done with your testimony?
No, I was going to talk about the pandemic response. If
All
that's
right, go right ahead.
All right. So I'd like to, just briefly talk about our response to the pandemic. I mean, this has been a very long and difficult year for our justice system. It's really challenged us, but I believe we have done a great job, I hope, of trying to respond as best as possible with as many changes as we've undergone over the time period. So I just want to give you sort of a little bit of a calendar about how we've adapted, and also really take this opportunity to publicly thank, on behalf of the branch, our court users, our justice partners, the legal community, who've really been very patient and adapted over these past 10 months as we've had to change the way we do business. So as you see from the slide, March and May, the beginning of the pandemic, March through May, we limited most in-person activity in our state's court facilities. This included a moratorium on criminal and civil jury trials. Understanding, at the beginning, who knew how long this was going to be? We learned this was going to be a long-term issue. So we really spent those 2 months trying to figure out how we could eventually resume in-person hearings and trials safely. So we worked very closely with the Minnesota Department of Health on our safety protocols, along with a step-by-step guide for how we could resume holding jury trials. In addition, we had to transition judges and staff away from the courthouses, so our IT staff were very busy trying to set people up to do most of their work remotely. In June, we decided the best way to move forward with jury trials was to hold some pilots. So 6 pilot counties, Blue Earth, Hennepin, McLeod, Olmsted, Ramsey, and Scott, held pilot jury trials under strict protocols. Masks were required, juries were socially distanced. We had to use multiple courtrooms in order to have places for the public to view a trial and have jurors have a place to go deliberate. And those modifications were made, and each jury pilot had to be approved in order to move forward. Those pilots, and I'll mention in a minute what kind of response we got from the pilots, but the response was positive enough that we were able to expand jury trials in July. Jury plans were approved for every one of our 87 counties by a group of judges and expert staff in my office who looked at those plans and decided if they would meet our strict safety protocols. So I'm happy to say that we resumed by early September criminal jury trials in all 87 counties across the state. Civil jury trials took a more measured approach. We had put them on hold through September 1st, but given the high demand in the criminal area, we decided to extend that moratorium till December 1st, except for civil jury trials that were already on the calendar. And those were allowed to move forward in the fall as long as they met the same sort of safety protocols that we had in the criminal area. All was going well in the fall, and I'll talk a little bit and give you a chart about how we were doing in the fall until November came around. And as you remember, in November, we were beginning to see cases spike. The governor was looking at taking additional action. We're hearing more trepidation from our jurors who were planning to come in post-November. And so we met as a judicial council, and on November 20th, the Chief Justice issued a new statewide order that suspended most in-person court proceedings, including both criminal and jury trials, through the end of this month, January 31st. Trials that were underway were allowed to finish, and we did create an exception process for some in-person hearings. Those exceptions had to go to the Chief Justice. They included cases where we might have a speedy trial demand, somebody could not be let out of custody, and we needed to process those cases. So we have been able to hold some in-person hearings under those exceptional procedures. We continue to hear cases remotely. Public service counters were allowed under the order to remain accessible through a variety of options, either live in the courthouse if the courthouse was still open, remotely, or by appointment. So we've continued to be able to provide access to the public, have their questions answered, have their filings received in one of those fashions, even though we're under this 2-month order to do most things remotely. What we heard from the jury trials we did hold between June and November, as you can see, we held 184 criminal jury trials and 10 civil jury trials. That's about 1/3 of the trials we held during the same period in 2019. About 89% of the criminal juries reached a verdict, and about 90% of the civil jury trials that we held reached a verdict. So those were very high numbers. We didn't have to have a mistrial due to safety or other protocol issues. Most of them went to verdict. It's important to note in Minnesota, people cannot decline jury service. They can try to create an ability to be excused from jury service. But we didn't see, as you can see in the middle of the screen, a large number of requests for postponement, about the same number as we had seen in 2019. So we feel like we educated our litigants to the safety protocols we had in place, and most of them felt safe moving forward with their jury trials. Also, as you can see, the number of jurors who failed to report when they were expected to report actually went down from 2019. So we found that also encouraging, that people were willing to show up. We also surveyed jurors after their jury service, and our data shows that they felt like we had done a good job. They felt safe in the courthouse. They felt safe in the courtroom. They felt safe deliberating as part of the jury, given the protocols that we had put in place for juries. We had, through the pandemic, to obviously expand our use of remote technology. At present, over 90% of all court hearings are being held remotely. We're using Zoom as our primary tool, although there are a couple other technologies that we have put in place. We have also created what we call technology rooms within the courthouse. If somebody has a hearing and they don't have a phone or an iPad or a computer, they can come and sit by themselves safely in a separate room with our technology that we've put in those rooms so that they can participate in a hearing even though they may not have their own technology. We also have expanded a pilot project to directly provide technology assistance to court users. So you're in your home, you haven't used Zoom before, you don't know what this mute button is, you don't know how to see things on your screen. We have staff who are now available to communicate with them via phone or other ways to help them through those hearings so that we can get through them as effectively as possible and they feel like they can really participate in those hearings. This chart really tells you about the efforts our district court judges and staff have undertaken to maintain court operations throughout this time of crisis. As you can see on the left side of the screen, in mid-July, our district courts held a little more than 16,000 hearings per week, which is about 60% of those that were held prior. We were holding probably about 26,000 hearings a week pre-pandemic. And as you can move over to the right side of the screen, you see the week of December 18th. We're now in the moratorium that was set by the Chief Justice's order, and we're up to 24,000, a little more than 24,000 hearings being held per week, which is about 90% of our pre-pandemic level. As I mentioned, about 90% of those are being held remotely. So in general, we're getting our business done through remote hearings, except I'll tell you where the caveat is. And so we're very proud that our judges and staff have been able to schedule a lot of these things remotely and get up to almost our pre-pandemic level of hearings across the state. The exception, of course, is felony and gross misdemeanor cases. That's where we are seeing the backlog grow. It's up about 33% from the beginning of the pandemic to about a little over 47,000 cases. We are concentrating on tackling this backlog through the use of both active judges and senior judges. We set a goal to reduce the backlog by 10%, and we were well on our way to doing that in the fall until, based on infection levels and other indicators, we had to dial back. So our judges really did a good job trying to reduce that backlog until we had to basically tell people to do things remotely, which greatly influenced our ability to hold civil and jury trials, criminal jury trials and civil jury trials. I will tell you that we've seen less of a backlog grow in other case types. In civil and family, the increase has been about 6%. And actually in juvenile delinquency, permanency, and our children in need of protection cases, we're seeing no backlog right now. Those cases are able to be handled almost totally remotely, and so we haven't seen the backlog grow at all. But the biggest one, of course, has been in the criminal area across the state. People have asked about evictions, and this is an area where we get a lot of questions. As you know, there's a statewide moratorium in place. Eviction cases can be filed, but will not be processed unless they meet a couple of exceptions having to do with public safety issues or illegal activity. So the number of filings has gone down significantly. We are putting things in place for when that moratorium may be lifted in whatever manner, and this is just a guessing game right now. Will it totally be lifted? Will it gradually be lifted? So we're trying to develop protocols for case processing when those numbers significantly go up. We're working with legal services to make sure that people are connected with legal services providers. We have an effort with the State Bar Association we're launching later this month to use pro bono lawyers to help with these eviction cases. And we have training scheduled for our judicial officers as these cases continue to grow, potentially once the moratorium is lifted. So how quickly that'll happen, we're not sure, but we're trying to put as many things in place to deal with that as we can. Just two other things I wanted to cover, and then I'll open it up for questions. One is the appellate courts. It's had less of an impact here due to the pandemic. Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals have maintained their caseload and hearing schedule through the use of remote hearing technologies and do not have a backlog of pending cases. Obviously, that's much easier when you don't have witnesses or juries in the appellate courts. The bar exam was successfully conducted in person in July and September with safety protocols and social distancing in place. And those new attorneys who successfully have passed the exam are being sworn in. I know our clerk of appellate courts has even done a couple of curbside swearing in, so we're using whatever way we can to try to deal with that at the appellate level. Lastly, I just want to answer some questions I have heard you had about CARES funding that may have come to the court. We did receive CARES Act funding from the federal government. It was basically in three groups. One was initially to try to expand our use of personal protective equipment and making modifications, plexiglass, other things to courtrooms so that we could not only have people there safely, but also expanded our use of some remote technology initially to get people in their homes equipped to handle those hearings. We did receive a little over $2 million to help tackle those backlogs through the use of senior judges. We were able to spend about $639,000 of that before the moratorium was put in place in December. Unfortunately, we did not acquire approval by Minnesota Management and Budget to extend those funds beyond the first of the year. So those funds are no longer available to us to help with the backlog and senior judges once we get to February 1st or whatever the new order is going to say. We did receive a little over 5.2 million. This was to expand remote hearing technology in the courtrooms, as well as technology that we needed as people are doing 90% of those hearings at home. And we believe that we are going to be able to use and have used that technology to purchase equipment and other things that we needed to make sure we could do things remotely for the longevity of this pandemic. As the chair mentioned, my last slide here is a little bit on lessons learned. Our first lesson is we continue and will continue to rely on public health guidance for when we come back in our courthouses and how our courthouses must continue to be configured for the time being to make sure that we are as safe as possible. We are continuing also to look at how we handle things once the pandemic is over. What kinds of things will we continue to do remotely? We heard loud and clear from our customers that they really do want to do as much of their business as they can online, and the pandemic has forced us to expand those services. And so some of those we hope will continue to be held online and remotely as we continue to move out of the pandemic. The people who come to our courthouses pre-pandemic sometimes had to wait a lengthy period of time before their case was called. In a Zoom environment, they're able to have which people generally seem to like. It means you may not have to take a half day off of work. You can take a half hour off of work and have your hearing held. So we're looking at how we can continue to do that. And some of that we're doing through surveys, either with our self-help center, surveying attorneys. We're beginning to launch a justice partner and litigant survey that'll be coming out later this month to see what things they think are working well in this pandemic and what things we might continue to do as we move on to our post-pandemic stage. So with that, I want to thank the committee for their interest. I'm open to answering any questions now, or certainly as we meet with you individually as the session moves on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shorba. We have about 8 minutes in this segment for questions. I think I'll start with Senator Latz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the last slide kind of picks up on where I wanted to go with this. I found in my own practice, and I know many other lawyers, at least doing defense work when we're in courts 3, 4, 5 days a week, we have vastly increased our efficiency. I certainly miss all of the in-courtroom communication with everyone that's part of the judicial system. But for example, I was in a Minneapolis courtroom for 3 hours this morning. At the same time, I took a break and was in a courtroom in Wright County for about 15 minutes. Actually, the hearing itself took all of about 3 minutes to deal with one case. And it would have cost me at least an hour and a half, driving and waiting around to handle the Wright County case. And I wouldn't have been able to handle the Minneapolis cases, and it was an in custody in Wright County. So, I mean, there are enormous efficiencies. I've handled cases all over the state without having to leave the comfort of my law office. Matters where it wasn't necessarily important for me to be present physically in the courtroom up in, say, Aitkin, Minnesota, or Aiken County. So I would encourage Mr. Shorba and the judicial branch to find ways in which hearings, especially often first appearances, misdemeanor level cases, and even certain kinds of evidentiary hearings could be handled remotely. I know there's a lot more behind the scenes communication between prosecutors and defense lawyers as well to get cases resolved ahead of time and then process them by mail or with e-filing systems as well. So we've all found ways to increase our efficiencies, and I think there's some long-term benefits for everyone. As Mr. Shorba mentioned, many people who would have to take a half a day off from work and lose the money that goes along with that, not to mention the inconvenience. And many of them don't have the resources or for whom it would be a difficult financial challenge to lose half a day's worth of income also. So there are a lot of good reasons to find ways to continue some of these practices. I would also like to add that while there may be a desire to get back into court as quickly as possible, and in many kinds of cases, the new virus variant, well, apparently not yet showing signs of making anyone sicker, it is showing a lot greater rate of transmission or higher levels of infectiousness, which is making in-person gatherings even more risky. So I trust that the judicial branch, in evaluating what to do after February 1st, will consider that aspect as well when deciding whether and how quickly to reopen. The other thing I will note is, and I don't think this was mentioned in Mr. Shorba's presentation, is that the rate of no-shows for criminal defendants has gone down, is what I am hearing from the clerks, who are telling me that there are just more people who are showing up by Zoom who would not have shown up in person. When the courts were open in person, when they were fully open, and then even in the early times of the reopening, there were still people who hadn't gotten the notices and so on, and they were having quite a heavy no-show rate. But the fact is now it's a lot easier for people to make the appearance, and it's being reflected in the fact that they are showing up in higher numbers, I think, than they used to. I'd be curious if the statistics bear that anecdotal evidence out. But I think in terms of getting people through and participating in the justice system when they need to, this has actually been a boon in some ways. So I thank you for the opportunity to share this experience and encouragement to the justice system.
Thank you, Senator Latz. We'll move on to Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sherba, one of the executive orders by Governor Walz is about the evictions. Is it fair to say that having communication and coordination and direction as to when those would be lifted would be ideal for the courts?
Mr. Shorba.
Mr. Chair, Senator Bigham, I'm in constant communication with the general counsel for the governor on that particular question. I continue to ask for as much heads up as possible, and they've assured me that they will give me as much heads up as possible when they're going to be making some changes to that executive order on evictions. And because of the exact point you raised, we need time to calendar issues. We need time to cancel issues. We can't just turn a ship around overnight. So your point is a very good one, and I've been assured we're going to have cooperation with the executive branch on that.
Okay, I won't drag you into a political argument, but it's thank you, Mr. Chair. It's fair to say that a quick and immediate removal of the executive orders would be problematic in this situation, I believe is. And I'm glad to hear you guys have conversations. That's good. That's what we need. We need a plan. So that's good.
Right. Mr. Shorba, while we're on this subject, does the eviction ban, does that cover corporate tenants as well? Or is it just residential?
I don't know the answer to that, Mr. Chair.
All right, we can get that answer in another manner.
Yeah.
Next will be Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a short question for Mr. Shorba. In terms of jurors showing up for court, you said that there was a slight reduction in the no-shows. My question is, what happens to somebody when they don't show up for jury duty and they haven't requested to be excused for legitimate reasons?
Mr. Shorba.
Mr. Pappas,
You're
You're
on mute
muted,
again.
Mr. Shorba. You're still muted.
sorry.
There we go.
Must have hit something. Mr. Chair, Senator Pappas, usually our jury staff will call the individual to find out, did they not get the notice? Did they have some reason why they couldn't show up? Will we put them on another list to be called at a later date? So we're not doing anything punitive to individuals. We're just trying to find out what's going on with their situation.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Senator Kiffmeyer, you have the honor of having the last question for this segment.
Oh, that's always a not good place to be, but thank you, Mr. Sharbal. Appreciate the work, and also as a conservator, a guardian, involved also with the courts, and appreciate the improvements, dramatic improvements over the years that I think has enabled you also during this time of, it was already online, so there didn't have to be a lot of changes for this kind of processing to get away from paper. In regards to the eviction situation, so you have a court hearing in regards to an eviction, and say, you know, everybody works it all through, goes through the whole process, and an eviction is ordered. During a pandemic, what happens to that ordered eviction? I have constituents who have neighbors in apartment buildings. The noise, the smoking, the drugs, and some other things that are going on are really difficult for them as families in these apartments. If they go through an eviction proceeding and there's a court order for that, what happens during this time? I'm not quite sure what I can tell them.
Mr. Shorba.
Mr. Chair, Senator Kiffmeyer, first of all, I want to thank you for your help on the guardian system and the conservator system. You've been a great partner in trying to help us to figure it out, so I appreciate all your work on that. The other question I got is whether the moratorium covers corporate tenants, and I've been told it only covers residential tenants, so I think that question is answered by my legal counsel here. With regard to evictions, if it meets the exception criteria, so say it is some drug activity or some illegal activity or a public safety activity, it'll go through the court, and the court will grant an eviction, and then that will be in the hands of the landlord to try to use whether it's law enforcement or other means they need to evict the individual. The courts aren't really involved at that point. We've just issued the order, and it's up to them to work with local law enforcement or some other way to give notice that the eviction process is completed, the order's been issued, as to how they get the person out. Now, I'm assuming law enforcement, as you mentioned, in this time of pandemic, has some protocols that they've put in place to make sure people are safe in those kind of situations, but that would be their function.
So I think to follow up, Mr. Chair, just that there is a process. So these things don't just turn on a spigot. They don't just go blink on and off. There is a process that is there for both the plaintiff and the defense, and there's a system that is in place, law enforcement and so on. So this is not a quick thing that happens. It's a process.
It is a process. I will,
Mr.
Chair, Senator Kiffmeyer, I will mention that statute has some timelines for when each of these parts of the process must be carried out. I will say, and this is just speculation, if we get a large influx of cases for eviction, those statutorily set timelines may be difficult to meet. So at some point, I'm not suggesting this as a legislative function, but somebody may want to take a look at those and see if they should be modified in pandemic times. But there is a process, and it's pretty well set out in statute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kiffmeyer. We will now move on to the second half of our meeting and get a review from the Department of Public Safety. I believe we're going to start out with Commissioner Harrington. And Commissioner Harrington, I see you, and you're unmuted, and so you may begin when you're ready.
Senator Limmer, Chair Limmer, members of the committee, it's a pleasure to Zoom see you today. It's nice to see some faces that I served with when I was in your august body, and to see a few new faces, although Senator Bingham and I have worked together on some other issues in both of our prior lives. So,
Senator, I keep calling you Senator Harrington. We miss you too, most of the time.
I can imagine there are moments where you are quite happy that I have left the August halls, but I'm always happy to come back and visit with you at any time. So
I would never admit that on a public record, Commissioner. So please proceed.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the committee for welcoming us today. And I also want to thank the men and women of the Department of Public Safety, who I will tell you have gone above and beyond the call of duty in 2020. From Trooper Brian Schwartz, who gave up his masks out on the state highway, to a doctor on their way to staff the front lines of COVID, to the Department of Homeland Security and General Joe Kelly, who has been running the State Emergency Operations Center for 304 straight days without one single infection. I think that's a really pretty amazing record, frankly, given the close quarters. Some of you, if you haven't visited the current State Emergency Operations Center, I hope you'll come down, because you'll be less than impressed, frankly, for the seat of government operations that we work out of to try and keep all the different catastrophes that happen in the state of Minnesota at bay. The Department of Public Safety has a mission of serving all communities to build a safer Minnesota, and it's been a challenge to really be all over the state of Minnesota. From officer-involved shootings that the BCA has investigated, to a record number of murders in the Twin Cities and murders all over the state, from 53 fatal fires that the state fire marshal worked on, to literally hundreds of protests that you're all too aware of. DPS has been really tasked with being from International Falls to investigate a murder out in the woods to the southernmost points of the state. We started last year, unfortunately, on January 6th with the attempted murder of a Waseca police officer, Officer Madsen, and we're very blessed that he is still in recovery, and that case has already been resolved. But we ended the year on December 30th in Minneapolis with an officer-involved shooting where officers were shot at and returned fire, and that young man lost his life. It has been that kind of a year in so many ways. The first 6 months of the year, we saw a 53% increase in murder, and we've seen virtually every violent crime category go up. And as a consequence, the Department of Public Safety, whether it's in our Victim Services Division, working on arsons with the Fire Marshal's Division, or the BCA working on murder investigations and evidence from all kinds of departments, have really been tasked. In addition to that, I will say that one of my big concerns this year going in, even before COVID, was around domestic violence. And I will tell you that domestic violence services have really been stretched this year. One of the things we've heard from victims of domestic violence is that the COVID really isolated them. It isolated them from the workplace, where oftentimes they might have been seen with a black eye or a bruise or a limp. It isolated them from their doctors, who in the privacy of the exam room were able to ask the kind of questions that would help us make them safe. And it's isolated them from the advocates, who, because of COVID, have been really hampered in terms of trying to get to them and serve them. But despite this, we have continued to work forward with them, with those advocates and with those victims. And I think we've continued to try and increase their level of safety. So I will tell you that one of the things that we really pushed this year, I'm a community policing cop, as many of you know. So the idea of being engaged with the community as part of our work here is really important to me. And community outreach through Nicole Archbold convened meetings statewide, in particular, because I know this is related to COVID, in particular to COVID. So we were, in fact, the convener of the meetings with the churches, the mosques, and the synagogues to talk about how they could operate safely, and also to meet with all of the law enforcement and public safety officials around how should they respond when they did get complaints. We met with Parks and Rec directors. We met with public housing. We met once again with domestic violence folks. We created an educational enforcement approach for the EOs that the governor issued, and we trained virtually every law enforcement officer in the state of Minnesota about how educational enforcement could be applied, as we were receiving literally thousands of calls around violations of the EO. In addition, as I said, we have been hosting weekly WebEx meetings with 200 plus police and fire chiefs, and we send out a daily information bulletin on COVID. Our HR department has worked through redeployment with COVID testing, and now we're working on vaccination and trying to make sure that all the troopers that are out there on the front lines are in fact getting a vaccination as quickly as we possibly can. The slide that's up in front of you shows sort of the division of labor within the department, and I know there are some new members on there. So I will note that there are 11 operational divisions in the Department of Public Safety. I was once told by Senator Randy Kelly that the Department of Public Safety was created when everything else had been done, and they said anything that wasn't in any other department, just put it in there. And sometimes that's how it feels, because we run the gamut from State Patrol and Traffic Safety and DVS on the transportation side to AGE and Justice Programs and ECN and the BCA on the public safety side. I would note, just for the folks that haven't been on the committee before, that while the Minnesota State Patrol is on the transportation side, you should keep in mind that the Capitol Security operation is in fact general fund. And so there's a public safety entity that's not transportation driven on the State Patrol. And as you are all well too aware of, the State Patrol's function in keeping the Capitol safe and keeping all of the elected officials at the Capitol safe has been a highlight of what we've been trying to do throughout 2020, but in a particular since the election and as we move toward the inaugural. On the public safety side, we have the 6 divisions. I'll go through them rather quickly here. We have alcohol, gambling, and enforcement. They have, in terms of COVID, been in particular responsible for responding to literally hundreds and hundreds of complaints about bars and restaurants and alcohol serving agencies that were in violation of the EO. Their general rules of thumb are they license liquor establishments, both on sale and off sale, and then they also regulate gambling enforcement. One of the things that people don't usually see is we've had a record number of lottery violations this year, primarily because so many stores were broken into during the riots and lottery tickets were stolen. And then as those lottery tickets then get cashed, AGE is then involved in enforcing and investigating and figuring out how they got stolen and who got them and how we get the money back for those. The State Fire Marshal's Division, which is run by Jim Smith, investigates fires all over the state of Minnesota. We spend a particular amount of time looking at fatal fires at residential, but we also, for example, the big fire just down the block from the Capitol across from the XL Energy Center, that was a state fire marshal and St. Paul Fire Department joint investigation. We were lucky on that one, frankly. We knew that we had a significant number of homeless that had been camping in that facility. And when it went up in a big way. And we were really very afraid that we were going to find a number of charred bodies in the remains of that building. And blessedly enough, we found 0 bodies in that building. We haven't been so lucky in some of the other fires. As I said, we're at 53 fatal fires this year, which is right up there with a record number of fatal fires. A lot of them are smoking related. We had a fair amount of them this year that were heating related also, with propane and other heating sources being used to heat things. We've also had a bunch of fires at some of the homeless camps. And so we work with the local fire departments and especially the 2 big fire departments in Minneapolis and St. Paul to try and resolve those cases. The Office of Justice Program is really the victim-centric part of the Department of Public Safety. They run the Crime Victims Reparation Board. They have the Crime Victim Ombudsman. And in terms of COVID, one of the things that we're very proud of is that we were told that there was money to be pushed out to community-based organizations. And despite the fact that we were told that the timeline was, in my mind, ridiculously short, I think like a couple of months, and it was $8 million. So it's a lot of money and not much time. And my experience with state government is we don't normally move that fast. But we wanted to get this money out into the community, and we did get the money out in the community in a timely fashion without cutting any corners, and we got it all over the state of Minnesota. So I was very, very proud of that. Emergency Communications Network, the ECN, is essentially your backbone for interoperability, the ARMOR system, and 911. So the other day, if you were in southern Minnesota and you were trying to get through to 911 and they couldn't hear you, it was ECN that was working with the providers to find out where the cable was cut and to give us the workaround to make sure that if someone was calling 911 from Mankato, that there was a way for them to communicate with their first responders, whether it was police, fire, or EMS. Homeland Security and Emergency Management, as I mentioned, there are 304 days of successful operation of the SEOC, but they're also your one-stop shop for disasters, whether it's a flood or a windstorm, or in the case of the Minneapolis riots, how do we deal with the aftermath of the fires and things along that lines. And finally, not last but not least, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension run by Drew Evans. They're responsible for investigations of crime in cities that are too small to have their own investigative operation, and in particular, heinous major crimes. They're the ones that go out on the murders in greater Minnesota and the small towns all over the state. Beyond the investigatory work that they have, they also have become the one-stop shop for all of the officer-involved shootings investigations in the state. They do the training, across the state of Minnesota for police officers, and they run all of the state's law enforcement communications and information systems. There are linked to the FBI, to DHS, but they're also the link for law enforcement to DVS and all of the information flow that happens there. Next slide. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes just talking about a couple of these programs, and then hopefully I'll leave plenty of time for questions to be asked. The Office of Justice Program, Kate Weeks is the director of that program. I mentioned already that the CR funds were available, and I really do want to highlight that very short timeline. We started recruiting departments, and a lot of departments, many of the state agencies told us there was no way possible to recruit a significant number of nonprofit organizations and government organizations to be able to apply for this money and turn it around within 30 days. And we said we could, and we did. Literally, we recruited well in excess of 50 different agencies that wanted to be able to do this. We got them the technical assistance so they could get their applications in. We were able to do normal review process where we checked to make sure that they didn't have any history of bad performance, that they had the capacity, and then we awarded the money. We told them it was on a very short timeline because the money, as we were originally told, had to be spent by December 31st. So if you can picture, you need to spend $220,000 on a community-based initiative that will reduce crime and improve services for victims, and you're going to have essentially October, November, and December, and you're going to have to get all your reports in time also. And they did it. They did yeoman's work on this. In addition, as I mentioned, they have been my resource for working on domestic violence. They also were staffing the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Task Force and the Criminal Sexual Conduct Task Force. So Kate Weeks and her department have been incredibly busy, as I've noted. Next slide.
Commissioner, I just wanted to offer that Kate is on the line and had some comments to make relative to what was sent by Angela Cook in questions.
Well, Kate, there we go.
Would you identify yourself for the record?
Yes, my name is Kate Weeks. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Justice Programs with the Department of Public Safety. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Commissioner.
I'm having a hard time even seeing you right now. I don't know if anyone else.
Can you see me now?
One moment, please. I see you now. There's a real person behind the voice.
That's right. Hello, Chair Limmer.
Yeah. Are you a robot? That's the question they usually ask. Go ahead, Ms. Weeks.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Harrington, for laying down that foundation. The Office of Justice Programs did receive a significant number of federal funds related to COVID over the past 10 months. This chart outlines the different funding sources that we received. Commissioner Harrington did a nice job covering the coronavirus relief funds that we did grant out over the fall of 2020. One of the questions that was raised was, did it actually turn the corner on crime, turn the curve? And what we know is leading up to receiving these funds to grant out, we saw that our crime victim service programs were having to adjust mightily to provide services in a pandemic. One of the things that we saw, even though calls were decreasing, the levels of severities in our conversations with our stakeholders and law enforcement is the severity was increasing. We also knew through our programs and also in our own experiences with our kids, we're all at home, levels of crime were increasing. Kids were out of school, activities were canceled, sports were canceled, and a lot of economic pressure, whether it be family members losing jobs, uncertainty during the pandemic, health considerations. There was just not a lot of structure for kids. And so we worked together with MMB and the commissioner's office and our stakeholders and the governor's working groups to really figure out how best to use this funding to help stop some of that. And so what we learned is with the $8 million, 49% went to support distance learning. There was technology enhancements. Money went to basic needs and emergency housing. PPE, money went to support survivors of domestic violence. It helped with internships and stipends for youth and mental health services, in addition to violence prevention and hazard pay. I do know that a lot of communities right now are putting together crime statistics for 2020 as a whole. But one of the things we did see is just a micro example that I'd like to share. With the CFR grants, 9 organizations within the fourth precinct of Minneapolis received money. These grants started, as Commissioner noted, from September through December. And looking at the crime data during that same time, the 4th precinct saw a 44.4% decrease in crime in that community. And people will argue, is that directly related or not? I think there's a lot of factors that go into crime trends, but what we do know is that those kids were receiving food, they were receiving tutoring, they were receiving technology that helped them to distance learn, they were receiving other supports that they hadn't in the past. Victims of crime were receiving extra services and technology and support and mental health services. So can I say it was directly related? No, I'm not going to do that. But seeing the benefits that this money made in communities throughout the state is pretty incredible. And but for that investment, that would not have happened in the way that it was able to last fall.
Ms. Weeks, what category of funding did that particular reference come from?
Yep. So that would be the third line on the chart in front of you, the coronavirus relief funds. And this funding went directly to the state of Minnesota. We went through that approval process with the legislature before any funds were approved and granted out.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. And then we also have 2 additional sources of CARES funding that we will be pushing out in the next couple of months. The first one, I'm going to just look at that second line, the Family Violence Prevention and Services. This funding came directly to the Office of Justice Programs, and it is specifically for addressing domestic violence. And so what we've done is working with an organization you're probably all familiar with, Violence Free Minnesota. And so those funds are going to be used for staffing costs such as hazard pay, relief staff, PTO for COVID-related relief, hotel costs, whether it be for isolation purposes or best practices in congregate living, equipment and supply costs, and direct client assistance, which will cover housing support, basic living needs, and other safety concerns that arise for victims of violence. And that is going to, I think we are in negotiations with that contract, and they will be working with all of their programs on how best to distribute that money. And then the final bucket is the CESF, the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding. That is also funds that we receive directly from the federal government, and it is distributed to all states based on a formula. So this was predetermined before it came to us. We are looking to, we are anticipating releasing an RFP in the next couple of weeks with a due date of March 8th. It'll be a competitive process. We'll host informational sessions. And this money can be used for expenditures that happen between January 1st, 2021 and December 31st, 21. And the purposes of this money is for preparation, response, and implementation related to COVID for criminal justice agencies. And that would also include nonprofits that are touch the criminal justice system. So that will be coming out as well.
Ms. Weeks, on that point, the CEFF monies, that is not on the chart that was before us. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Senator Limmer, I couldn't quite hear you.
Ms. Weeks, the reference to the route of money coming through CEFF that you just talked about, that is not on the chart that's before us. Is that correct?
It is. It's the first line on the chart.
All right. And the amount of money that you referenced, are the dates that you mentioned eligible was January 1st through December 31st of 2021?
Chair Limmer, members, yes, that is correct.
And do you know the dollar amount that's will be available?
Yes. Currently, we are earmarking $7,500,000 of that. We are reserving some for administration of those funds. If we don't need as much as we think, we will be granting that out as well.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Weeks.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask a question. You mentioned in your testimony that something about money going to mental health scenarios, and I'm just wondering who exactly got that money and how much?
So, Chair Limmer, members, Senator Anderson, it's my understanding that a handout was sent to the committee outlining all of the recipients of the CRF funds and the amount that they received. Currently, we are still, so the money expired December 30th, and our grantees have about a month to put in final reporting requirements that will specifically outline what money was spent and for what buckets. So what we do know currently when we were doing awarding the funds is that 16% of that total amount went to mental health and health services.
Ms. Weeks.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Weeks, specifically, who did that go to? It says 16%, so that's a generalized number for who got the money?
Ms. Weeks?
Chair Limmer and Senator Anderson, did you, I thought that a chart listing all 74 grantees and the amount that they requested was submitted to the committee.
Is that this?
Kate, it was not, but I will send it.
Okay, sorry about that. I apologize.
Any other questions for Ms. Weeks right now? We still have the rest of the presentation to continue with. Ms. Weeks, are you finished with your presentation?
Senator Limmer and committee, I am, but I will be here in case any other questions arise.
I'm sure we may have questions at the end of the committee. Commissioner Harrington, would you like to continue?
Yes, and we're going to move to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, or the BCA. Andrew Evans is the superintendent there. I want you to know that despite COVID, it did not prevent any BCA investigations from going forward. I know there was a question about PPE, and I think Superintendent Evans will talk about that, but we have definitely seen that they have had the N95 masks and the other equipment that they have needed for that. The only area that I'm aware of with BCA that was really dramatically affected by COVID was, in fact, training. Our face-to-face training that we typically do at the BCA was extremely limited by the fact that we weren't operating on a face-to-face. So, for example, breathalyzer training. So if you can imagine standing over a set of tubes where you're trying to teach people how to blow into a machine, Given COVID and masks, not the easiest thing to do. But despite that, the training unit has come up with hybrid models to be able to make sure that people's certifications did not lapse. And the BCA has figured out workarounds on virtually every challenge that COVID has brought up to them. I turn it over to Superintendent Evans to give some additional context and comments.
Superintendent Evans, welcome to the committee. Would you identify yourself for the record?
Yes, thank you, Chair Limmer and members. My name is Drew Evans. I am the superintendent at the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I was asked to briefly touch on this. The commissioner provided a good segue. The BCA, when the pandemic occurred, was uniquely positioned to really transition very quickly to a telework and hybrid environment and how we work here at the BCA, mainly because we've worked all over this state for the duration for a very long time. So our staff was set up to telework because we're used to working out of police departments, sheriff's offices, fire halls all across the state of Minnesota. In our day-to-day operations, we have about a third of our staff still at our headquarters location. In particular, about 50% of our laboratory is here at any one given time. What we were able to do with them is that they do their analysis of the casework that they're doing. So they do their casework while they're here, and then the data analysis that they often do as they're generating reports, reviewing the results, they can then do that from an alternate location. And what that's allowed us to do is keep the infection rate within our facility very low. We have a very robust exposure control plan when it comes to COVID at the BCA, and we've had fairly low numbers transmitted from within the building. As the commissioner noted, we're careful in that plan to look and determine who works on investigations across the state. We have had, because of the work that our agents have to do, a significant impact in terms of the number of agents that have either been exposed to COVID or contracted COVID, including through their work. Part of that is because of the type of work BCA agents do, that they had to be in close proximity to individuals as they are interviewing them in criminal cases, from our homicides to officer-involved shootings to child pornography investigations, although we've taken additional steps to mitigate that. Certain non-critical interviews that we always have done in person, we've determined which ones of those we can do via telephone to minimize that exposure. So we've continued on. As Administrator Shorba noted, there is some pieces of this that have been good for us. For example, with the courts being less in session than they have before, it's allowed us to get through some of our backlogs. Drug chemistry, for example, because our scientists are not traveling all over the state going to court, that it's allowed us to catch up. Now, there is going to be a backside to that as the courts continue to ramp up and get their court cases back online. We're concerned that they will be spending a lot of time in testimony across the state. But I will echo what Senator Lass noted before. It's created a lot of efficiencies as a number of courts have allowed our scientists to testify remotely, allowing them to shrink the amount of time that they're spent testifying across the state of Minnesota. I always say Minnesota, our pockets of population tend to be concentrated in some areas around the state, but it's a very large state geographically. And our 150 or so scientists spend a lot of time driving all over Minnesota to go to our county courthouses and testify on their analysis. And so from that perspective, it's allowed us to do a number of different things in relation to that. And so overtime, I was asked to comment on a little bit too. The way we fund overtime, most of what we're doing, as the commissioner noted, has been business as usual, just in a slightly modified fashion where we may be working from on a day-to-day basis, but the casework continues on. And the overtime that we have expended related to this has been related to the stay-at-home hotline that we've been operating as an information. And it would be a better way to say that hotline is really an information clearinghouse. It's a place for Minnesotans and others to go when they don't quite know where to go. And we connect them with local authorities when there's been violations of the executive order or other things that they need to connect with their local authorities from there. And so there's been overtime expended with that, about 880 hours since the beginning of the pandemic. But other than that, we have not expended any more overtime than we normally would. But we do have a lot of overtime based on casework and other work that we do at the BCA, but it is not COVID related. So those are my comments, unless there's any questions from members.
There are questions. Senator Latz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess would reemphasize the efficiencies that the BCA has found in terms of travel. While there are some disadvantages to testifying remotely, I think most lawyers would prefer when they're examining or cross-examining witnesses to be able to do it face-to-face in person. Certainly, there are plenty of opportunities where we can maintain efficiencies like this going forward. Just to give you a little bit of an example, I appeared in Redwood Falls 3 times in the last 8 months. All of them were remote. Each hearing took about 10 or 15 minutes. But if I'd had to go there in person, like pre-pandemic days, each appearance would have cost me more than a full day's worth of round trip driving and travel time, not to mention the expenses associated with that. So there are lots of ways that we can find, I'm sure, with the BCA and with the Department of Public Safety, there'll be ongoing efficiencies that we can use for the benefit of the taxpayer and to make our work more effective as well as efficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Latz. Are there any other questions for Senator or for Superintendent Evans? Why don't we move on? Commissioner Harrington, what's the next division?
The last division that we're going to talk about in any depth, although I do want to make one quick note. The Alcohol Gambling Enforcement Agency also has encouraged some overtime. Given the need for investigations into those complaints about bars being open on the weekends. Typically, AGE is a Monday through Friday operation, and we've had them out all over Minnesota doing investigations when we've had complaints about bars being open in violation, and that required them to be actually going out and doing site visits on the weekends to see what they were doing. So we have seen some additional overtime in that. The last division that we're going to talk about in full today is the Homeland Security and Emergency Management Division run by General Joe Kelly. They are the partner to the Department of Health in terms of operations and admin for the COVID pandemic. I mentioned there are 304 days without an infection, and they have been involved in literally everything from testing to contract tracing to management of the PPE supply and now on to vaccination. So I would ask General Kelly to speak at this time.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Joe Kelly. As the Commissioner said, I'm the Director of the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. Just give a quick rundown, being mindful of the time remaining in this hearing, of some of our major activities. As the Commissioner said, more than 300 days of continuous activation of the State Emergency Operations Center. It's been a long haul, but we still have a long way to go. Emergency management and disaster incident response is definitely a team sport. And it's not only my agency that has been operating here in the state EOC, but our primary partner with the Department of Health, with great support from agencies like Department of Military Affairs, Management and Budget, DEED, Department of Education, and many others. It is the State Emergency Operations Center is where state agencies come together in order to provide support to an incident. And much of that work, as has been expressed earlier, has been done virtually. Early on, there was a whole lot of in-person work being done here, specifically as teams and work groups are being formed, but a lot of that has now been farmed out. My agency's had a key role in leading and guiding a number of COVID working groups, and these working groups are temporary expansion of state capabilities to deal with the very incident-specific requirements for a health pandemic. And as the Commissioner started through the list, we talk about testing, case investigation, contact tracing, support to long-term care facilities, healthcare surge, critical care supplies, at-risk populations, specifically people experiencing homelessness. At the same time, we have a public health crisis raging, food security, and now the top priority in almost every area is the vaccination program. Like I said, these are a temporary expansion of the state capabilities that have been almost exclusively staffed by state employees from across the whole enterprise that are here temporarily on redeployment assignment. My agency has also been staffing the COVID-19 public helplines and supporting the other agencies to make sure that Minnesotans get their questions answered and have the information that they need during the outbreak to keep themselves and their families safe. Speaking of information, my GIS and data people have played a key role in maintaining the COVID response databases and the maps. We say all the time, it takes good information, good data to make good decisions. And a lot of these sources of information and how they're displayed really were created, I don't want to say on the fly, but in stride with the response to this public health emergency. And it's also important because we use that information not only to inform our decisions here, but also to inform the public. As I mentioned a couple seconds ago with the helplines and the hotlines, there's a tremendous thirst among Minnesotans for information about what's happening, what do they need to do to keep themselves safe, where can they get a test, when are the vaccines coming, and so on and so forth. So that has been one of our primary efforts. And of course, we spent considerable time coordinating with our federal partners, and that includes the Department of Homeland Security and FEMA, the Department of Defense and the Corps of Engineers, as well as Health and Human Services. And we've been also assisting Minnesota Management and Budget with making sure that state agencies and local governments can get reimbursed from FEMA for the costs that are eligible under the disaster declaration for the pandemic. Specific question about overtime for my agency. The first 3 months, we put in a lot of extra time with anything from 14 to 24-hour-a-day operations, 7 days a week. I think we racked up here at HSEM about $750,000 in overtime. The good news for us, because they're directly associated with the operation of the State Emergency Operations Center, those hours are eligible for FEMA reimbursement. More specifically into some of the funding issues and activity that are on this slide, we have, as an agency alone, have received just over $5 million in reimbursement for our costs from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And like I said, a lot of that is for overtime, the cost of running the operations center, including meals and parking for people that don't normally work here, as well as other response costs. I believe that so far to date, state agencies working through Minnesota Management and Budget with our assistance have requested reimbursement for about $30 million of eligible expenses. And about a third of that has actually come back to the state in cash. The second line on there, Mr. Chair and members, is for a grant program that we run every year, the Emergency Management Grant Program. But this year, FEMA sent out a supplemental program, about $1.8 million to provide additional financial resources to local emergency management organizations across the state. We passed 100% of that money down to that local level. So that money went to counties, tribal emergency management agencies, cities and so forth to help them with the additional workload associated with the response to this pandemic, operating operations centers, staff overtime, personal protective equipment, disinfecting materials, as well as equipment to enable teleworking support to their local levels of government. Mr. Chair, members, that concludes my presentations. Of course, I stand for questions or can kick it back to Commissioner Harrington.
Yes, are there any questions? Now I see that Senator Ingebrigtsen has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the emergency management testifier. You and I go back a long ways with emergency management. Me and my sheriff days, I was designated as the emergency management director in Douglas County for 16 years. So we understand it pretty well. I'm going to ask this question, and I'm not sure who wants to answer it or how it can be answered. Is that the emergency management fund? The governor has appropriated dollars, I believe a little over 70% of those dollars, to help rebuild Minneapolis, St. Paul. At least that was said and if it is not, I'd like to certainly be corrected or have it cleared up, of the emergency management money for the riots that went on in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Can you comment on that, or maybe Commissioner Harrington can?
Director Kelly or Commissioner Harrington?
Joe, if you've got information on that, I don't believe that to be true.
Commissioner Harrington.
So I'm sorry, Senator Limmer, Senator Ingebrigtsen, I don't believe that to be true, but I would be happy to look into that. I know there has been discussions and there have been asks from the two cities for dollars to assist them in the aftermath of the riot, but I don't believe that we have tapped the emergency fund for that. But Director Kelly, maybe you can clarify that for us.
Director Kelly.
Mr. Chair and Senator Ingebrigtsen, you will recall immediately in the aftermath of the civil unrest in Minneapolis, Governor Walz asked the president for a major disaster declaration for a portion of the damages associated with the civil unrest. FEMA came to town. We did our typical preliminary damage assessment to catalog those expenses that would be eligible for reimbursement from FEMA. And that came to about $15.5 million. The governor made a request of the president, and the president denied that request. The governor then, following the procedures, appealed that denial. Clearly, the costs under the Stafford Act, under FEMA, the costs associated with uninsured damage to public infrastructure and response costs specifically related to the fires was eligible under FEMA. If it hadn't been, FEMA would not have allowed that under our preliminary damage assessment. It simply was a case that the president decided that he did not want to authorize disaster assistance for Minnesota. Following Chapter 12B, the statute for emergency disaster assistance, that made it eligible, if you will, or the next place for the city to go was to the governor and ask for state disaster assistance, which they did. So there hasn't been any money paid out yet, but the city, with the authorization that the governor did give them, could get reimbursed for their costs specifically that relate to the damage from fire and explosion. I don't know what the percentage of the disaster assistance account that would be, Senator Ingebrigtsen. We could do the math. I think in general terms, it probably could be about $11 million if I do the math from 15 million and change, 75% of that. And I hope that answers your question.
I believe that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, follow up. I believe that that's accurate, the numbers. And so this is going to go towards infrastructure damage due to the riots then. Mr. Kelly.
Director Kelly.
Mr. Chair, Senator Ingebrigtsen, that is correct. It is, I think that the costs are to either a city or county library that suffered fire damage, the precinct headquarters, some of the costs that the fire department incurred as they fought the fires during the period of unrest. But no law enforcement costs, because they're not eligible under FEMA, and none of the private business costs and others. All public infrastructure, but it had to, in order to be eligible, it specifically had to be due to the fires that were caused during the civil unrest.
Director Kelly, did that cover the post office that was located there?
Mr. Chair, no, because that is a federal facility. The federal government is covering those expenses.
I get it. Okay. Senator Ingebrigtsen, any other questions?
No, it was answered to me. It was, it's correct what I had been hearing, and I think there's discussions with the Senate Finance Committee as to if that was the appropriate way of spending dollars, but especially when we'd had none before and we'd built it up as high as we had. for natural disasters. And I don't think anybody will call this a natural. I don't think you could make it that it's a natural disaster, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for the answer and also the report from you and Commissioner.
Thank you. Senator Bingham, you get the last question.
Oh, good. I always like getting the last word, Mr. Chair.
I know you do.
Yeah. Commissioner Harrington and Director Kelly, thank you so much, and to all your staff for the presentation today. I'm not going to drag you into a political fight, although I know that Commissioner Harrington knows how to do that because he's been in our seats. But I have a question. Some of the governor's executive orders that are allowed through the peacetime declaration are specific to both of your jobs, whether it's drawing down the national stockpile, whether it's procurement of PPE and such. If those would rapidly be taken away, would that make your job more difficult?
Senator Harrington.
Mr. Chair, Senator Bingham, yes, it would. We have been asked by first responders. We're currently in the process of trying to get 1 million masks out to police officers so that they will not run short. The state fire marshal actually, as a sidebar, had 100,000 homemade masks made so that fire departments and volunteer fire departments could have masks. Getting enough gloves and enough shields and enough equipment in a timely fashion is a challenge. It's a challenge for the big departments, but it's even more of a challenge for the small departments that oftentimes do not have the procurement mechanism. And so if the State Emergency Operations Center was not working the procurement angles on this, I do not know that they would get them in a timely fashion, and that would put their first responders at risk.
Senator Bingham, any other follow-up?
Nope, just thank you for the comments, Commissioner.
All right. We're at the bewitching hour of ending our committee. We want to thank all of those who participated from the courts as well as public safety. We know you have difficult jobs. You have a high volume of business to take care of. And so far, it looks as though you're doing well in handling historic challenges. We thank you for your work. We thank you for your time in front of us. And I'm sure as we progress through the session going all the way to May, we will certainly have you before us again on a variety of subjects. So thank you again. Hearing no other discussion, we are now adjourned. Thank you.